Professor Boyle, thank you very much for talking to Pukaar News. Can you please tell us a bit about yourself?
I grew up in Suffolk. I've worked in Wales, I've worked in Scotland, I've worked in New Zealand, I've spent time in the States, so I've travelled around a fair bit. Now I found myself for the first time actually in the Midlands, working at the University of Leicester. I'm an academic by background, so most of my career was in Scotland at the University of St Andrews. Then I moved to be Chief Executive of one of the research councils. During that time I was also President of something called Science Europe, which brings together 50 of the funding agencies across Europe. And then of course in October moved here to the University of Leicester, where I'm now the Vice-Chancellor.
30 months ago, an archaeological dig under a car park in Leicester proved to be a defining moment in history, reshaping our view of the past.
It was a really exciting time to come to the university, and not just the university, the city as a whole. Richard III is a wonderful project. We've talked a lot about it obviously in the last few months, but quite genuinely, I mean, it's a fascinating detective story. It involves so many people across the whole of the university, people from genetics, but also people from engineering, from our history department and various other places. And they put together a story of not just finding some bones, which of course was part of it, but then doing some really detailed detective work to work out whether they really were the bones of Richard. So I was fortunate. I arrived to it late. This was work that had been going on for some time, and I was lucky enough to be involved in all the celebrations that went alongside this, and also what I thought were some really moving ceremonies at the very end, the reinterment and so on, I think were conducted extremely well. And the fact that so many people from the city, the region turned out, we had a whole week of celebration, but throughout that period, everybody was really strongly behind this. I think it was great for us as a university. It's helped us develop really strong relationships with the city, including the mayor, but also the cathedral and other groups. So overall, I thought it was a great time for me, but also for the university and the city as a whole. Leicester's new to me. I'd been to Leicester 2 or 3 times for conferences and academic work, but we've settled in exceptionally well. We were living in Bath before we moved here. We spent 3 or 4 years in Bath, but we've really enjoyed the city. It's obviously extremely multicultural. That's been fascinating for us. We've really been welcomed by people from all sorts of different communities. We find it a vibrant place. It's friendly. People are extremely welcoming. And of course there's all sorts of things going on. We have a massive comedy festival, we have the biggest Diwali celebration in the whole of the UK, all sorts of things that make this a very special place.
We're done, Richard III. What is the next?
Oh, there's all sorts of things going on at the university. It's almost constant. On a daily basis you hear about the next big breakthrough. Our space scientists are forever coming up with new things out there in space. Our medical scientists are always coming up with new findings. There have been some really exciting ones recently, particularly around blood cancer and some work around Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. All sorts of things that are happening in the university which on a daily basis make us realise how important these institutions are. Clearly they play 2 roles. We educate, we bring people here to enjoy with us that sort of journey of discovery, but of course we also do research, and we do an awful lot of world-leading research in this place.
Please tell us about the HeForShe project.
Well, HeForShe is an exciting project launched by the United Nations. The United Nations Women's Unit are really trying to press home that men have to get more involved in thinking about equality for women. What they've done is organise a new campaign, and they're identifying 10 universities, 10 businesses, 10 global businesses, and indeed 10 nation states, so 10 by 10 by 10, who they'd like to stand up and be the sort of first group of people to champion this new initiative. Well, they've just launched the very first few institutions there. First 5 universities have just been announced, and Leicester's very, very proud to be the only UK university in that list of 5. We're one of the universities who's standing up there and really arguing strongly that we've got to do a better job. The critical thing, of course, is that while women do very, very well at undergraduate level, probably more than half of our students are women, which is great. That's very different to what would have happened 10 or 20 years ago. The problem is, as you move further up the hierarchy, as you get up to the more senior positions, our professorial staff, for example, only 22% of our professors are women. So something's happening along the way, and we've got to think carefully about what the various factors might be. What we're trying to do is educate people in the university, both staff and students, about gender bias, where it exists, where often it's unconscious, where people don't realise that it exists, and try and help people understand why we need to make a difference in terms of gender equality.
What is the university especially offering to international students?
Well, we're a very international campus, of course. As probably the most multicultural city in the UK, it's welcoming from that point of view. People realise the city is used to having people from a variety of different backgrounds. Around about a third of our students are from overseas, so a third of the students on campus will come from other countries outside of the EU and the UK. But I think international students are attracted to places where they can feel welcomed, and we are lucky that we have quite a nice campus feel to the University of Leicester. And I think for many people that's quite comforting. It's quite nice to have a campus where you can feel at home, really get to know the place very easily.
Why University of Leicester very keen to develop a relationship in India?
I've visited India many times in my previous role, in fact spent a lot of time in India. It's something I want to continue. I haven't yet been to India as part of this role, but I have been overseas to other countries, and I'm hoping to get to India very, very soon. We obviously have strong links because of the community here. The community has strong interest in India because there's such a large Indian population here. It's an obvious partner for the university. We already have a good number of students who come here from the Indian subcontinent. Of course, our history in Leicester goes back to Indians who've come from Africa and other parts of the world as well. So we're trying our best to develop relationships, not just with India, but of course India is really one of our important partners as we go forward in the future.
What's your plan for next 5 years?
Oh, we have all sorts of plans for the next 5 years. We'd like to grow the university. We think that we ought to have more students based here on campus with us, and we've got opportunities to think about how we can do that. We want to think more about our international agenda and think about which countries we should really be fostering. India is one great example of that, but I've just come back this week from Kurdistan in Iraq. There are various parts of the world that we'll be engaging with. One of the things that we'd like to do is build up really deep relationships of trust with some of those countries, and that's something we're starting to embark on, I think, now. But there's plenty of other exciting opportunities. We're creating some big new research institutes. We'll be announcing those soon, and they're designed to be very interdisciplinary, bringing people from across the university, not just in one particular department or field, but taking the skills of people from social science, arts and humanities, science and engineering and medicine, and bringing them together to think about how we can answer some of the really important questions of today with a group of people who bring a whole variety of different skills.
Now I'm going back to your personal life. What's your favorite sport?
Our favourite sport, that's an interesting one. So as I was growing up, and in fact still today, I still like to play some football. I played all last season actually when I was living in Bath. Never had a single injury, and I've played here, interestingly, a couple of times in the same team as the de Montfort Vice-Chancellor, and both times come away with an injury, so I don't know whether somebody's telling me something about whether it's time to stop. But I like a lot of sport. I cycle, I run, I like to play a little bit of cricket. I like watching rugby actually, probably even more than watching football nowadays. So if sport's on the TV, I'm always very tempted. I just have to resist it a little bit if I can.
And what's your favorite food?
Favourite food? Well, you won't be. You'll think I'm lying, but it's actually Indian food. I really enjoy Indian food, and there've been so many fantastic restaurants in Leicester that we've been able to take advantage of. That it's a really great city to live in if you do enjoy Indian food.
Favorite country for holidays?
Or favourite country for holidays is very challenging. I lived for a year in New Zealand, and I have to say I really enjoyed my experience down in New Zealand. It's a great country. It's quite small. You can be skiing in the afternoon and sort of sunbathing in the morning. It's such a small country. You can move around in that way. So I enjoyed New Zealand a great deal. But as a geographer by training, you won't be surprised to hear that I enjoy all sorts of travel. So just learning about new places has been a wonderful part of being an academic. It's allowed me to get around the world in a great way. There's still a few countries to go, but I've managed to capture quite a few of them.
Favorite book?
Favorite book? One of the books I read just recently is The Shock of the Fall. It's written by a nurse, and it's all about a child. Well, I won't give away the story, but I really enjoyed it. It was written by somebody who in a sense was quite academic, but it's a fictional book. I'd recommend it to anyone. I thought it was a really, really interesting read.